Hello everyone. Today we are here to talk about one of America's most influential people, Charles Lindbergh. He was born in 1902 in Detroit, Michigan and was raised in Minnesota. He eventually went to the University of Wisconsin for 2 years before he quit to pursue his true dream, and that was flying. Starting out as a stunt pilot, he would eventually become one of the world's most successful aviators and change the industry altogether. While Lindbergh is known for his contributions as a pilot, few know about his successes as an inventor. He also served his country as a member of the United States Army. His path to fame, however, was from his transatlantic flight, which would change the aviation industry forever.
Charles Lindbergh was also known as an inventor, and his story is not complete without knowing the facts of his help outside of the aviation community. His contributions were great in the aviation community, but lesser known and still just as important are his innovations and inventions in the regular world. He was always known for fixing and innovating new components on various aircraft. But what many people may not know is that he was also responsible for co-founding the artificial heart, or the heart pump. Lindbergh's sister-in-law had various heart problems and was told by the doctors that she would not be able to have a critical surgery because her heart could not function outside of the body long enough for the surgery to be completed. This struck Lindbergh and encouraged him to do something to help. That is why he and Alexis Carrel, a French surgeon and also a winner of the Nobel Prize, created an invention that would allow the heart to continue pumping outside of the body while surgery was taking place. The pump was constructed of Pyrex glass and was capable of moving air and life-giving fluids through the cutout organs to keep them working while the surgery was taking place. This pump was a medical breakthrough, and it paved the future for the invention of other artificial organs. Lindbergh had always spent long hours in the air and had lots of time to muse about life and death. He said himself that this is why he was so eager to create something that would assist in bringing life. Some might say that Lindbergh was too late because the invention was not perfected in time to save his sister-in-law's life. But Lindbergh did manage to meet his own goals on a personal level, and the impact that the invention had on the biological community is worth being noted.
Thank you, Athena. Charles Lindbergh was a great inventor. He also had a tremendous career in the military. He enlisted in the Army in 1924, where he trained to become a pilot in the reserves. It was around then when Lindbergh began flying mail to and from Chicago from St. Louis, which this led to his 33.5-hour flight across the Atlantic, which was the longest at its time. This led to Lindbergh earning the Medal of Honor. He's one of only a few recipients to ever win the award for a non-combat related achievement. Lindbergh also flew 50 combat missions during World War II over the Pacific Theater, helping the Americans against the war against the Japanese. In 1939, he was requested by General Hap Arnold himself to help evaluate the service's current status to prepare it for war. It was his first active duty assignment since the late 1920s, where he was training to become a pilot and when he graduated from Air Flight School. Lindbergh flew for the Missouri National Guard for the majority of his military career. Lindbergh also had an unusual relationship with Nazi Germany in the 1930s. Lindbergh was one of the only Americans ever allowed to go and tour German facilities during right before World War II. He was given the tour by Hermann Göring himself, who at the time was the commander of the Luftwaffe, or the German Air Force. Lindbergh also received an award called the Commander's Cross, which in Germany is one of the highest awards you could receive at the time, and he received it on behalf of Adolf Hitler himself. Lindbergh was known to be against the war in World War II. He became involved in the America First Committee, which was a committee basically going against having America get involved or intervene in World War II. Many Americans believe Lindbergh to be a Nazi, sharing the same views as Adolf Hitler or other Nazi Germany leaders themselves. As you can see, Lindbergh had a tremendous role in the military, which ranged from flying overseas to getting involved in helping the United States military learn about Germany's power. Now, here's Dustin with his life as a pilot. Thank you.
Charles Lindbergh developed a fascination with flight around the time he was 18 years old and went to college. So much so that in 1923, after only 2 years at the University of Wisconsin, he quit to become a barnstormer. A barnstormer was essentially a flying circus and was wildly popular in the 1920s as the newest form of entertainment for spectators. Lindbergh began by wing walking, switching planes midair, and parachuting as part of his act. It was at this time Lindbergh began to show true talent as an aviator. While barnstorming, he purchased his first plane and rose to the top rank as top stunt pilot in the nation. His acts progressed to the outer limits of aviation in those days. He was performing complicated loops, spins, and even stalling his aircraft and shutting off the engine 3,000 feet above the ground and gliding it back down to safety. The crowds adored him, and as much fun as Lindbergh was having pushing himself and his aircraft to the limit, the compensation didn't pay enough. So he looked to find another job in the aviation industry that paid a little bit more. And it was then that Lindbergh began delivering airmail between Chicago and St. Louis. It was while delivering the mail that he gained a reputation by surviving a record 4 aircraft mishaps by parachuting to the ground safely, thus earning the moniker Lucky Lindy. However, those near-death experiences did not stop him from pushing the boundaries in aviation. And in 1927, as you'll find out next, he accomplished an aviation first. Lucky Lindy continued paving the way for pilots and the aviation industry as we know it today.
On May 20th, 1927, Charles Lindbergh set on a flight that would change the world. 33 hours later, he became the first person to successfully fly all by himself across the Atlantic Ocean. Crowds cheered him as he landed in Paris, and people celebrated the news all around the world. The president at the time, Calvin Coolidge, presented him with the Congressional Medal of Honor, along with the Distinguished Flying Cross for his accomplishment. Before Lindbergh's flight, the average American thought flying was way too dangerous and preferred to travel by car, boat, or train. After his flight, however, everyone suddenly wanted to fly. The year after his flight, more than 3 times the amount of people flew compared to the year before. He became an ambassador for the aviation industry as its popularity skyrocketed. Beginning in 1931 with his wife, Anna Morrow, he began making the routes to be used by airlines today. He routed over 30,000 miles of flights across the Atlantic Ocean with her. They also routed flights across all of Canada, all the way to Asia. Some of the routes that they created are still the preferred routes used today. Lindbergh was constantly trying to help the aviation industry progress, and his efforts not only helped in the commercial airline industry, but the military as well. He helped pilots learn to save fuel to fly longer missions, as well as helping with research for fighter aircraft. After Lindbergh's transatlantic flight, the world began to trust air travel, and because of that, it has grown into what it is today, with thousands of flights each day carrying millions of people all around the world. Without his influence, there is no telling where the industry would be at today. In conclusion, Charles Lindbergh is known for being the first to fly across the Atlantic. However, his influence on the world has been far greater. He was not only a pilot, but a very successful inventor, a member of the armed forces, and the ambassador for the rise of the aviation industry. Because of him, air travel is the trusted and preferred way to travel all around the world. Millions of people fly each year, and it was all made possible because Charles Lindbergh believed that anything was possible.